This video contains discussions of child abuse. Viewer discretion advised.
Contreras requested their part be taken out.
It's still hard to believe two people did all those horrible things to him.
60 reports, 16 months, 0 action. Gabriel Fernandez suffered torture that Netflix documented, but they missed the most shocking evidence. The wrong address that could have saved his life. The siblings' testimony Netflix glossed over, the falsified records that let social workers walk free, and the 2020 court ruling that means no social worker will ever face criminal charges for a child's death, no matter how egregious their negligence. Netflix told Gabriel's story to 26 million viewers, but they didn't tell you everything. This is what Netflix didn't show.
I can't tell you how many people I've spoken to that have chosen a career path in social services because they say they want to make a difference. How many people have named their children after Gabriel? My 5-year-old son's middle name is Gabriel.
Between October 2012 and May 2013, the Los Angeles Department of Children and Family Services received over 60 reports about Gabriel Fernandez. Not 6, not 16. Over 60 documented calls from teachers, nurses, family members, and neighbors, all describing a child being systematically destroyed.
They had the upper hand, I honestly believe, to remove him and save him, but they didn't.
Netflix mentioned the reports. They showed you that authorities were called.
We have added thousands of caseworkers, which have increased the capability of us to be able to work very closely with families.
But they didn't show you the pattern. October 2012, Gabriel's teacher reports he has BB pellets embedded in his skin. She can see them under the surface.
Are still getting killed, children are still getting murdered, children are still getting tortured, and this is after Gabriel.
DCFS investigates. Case closed. November 2012. The school nurse reports cigarette burns on Gabriel's arms and legs.
That those that have heard or seen his story, at least those people are going to do their part. And that, I know that children have been saved due to his story.
Fresh burns. DCFS investigates. Case closed. December 2012. Gabriel's uncle calls to report the boy is being starved. He's lost visible weight. His clothes hang off his frame. DCFS investigates. Case closed. By January 2013, Gabriel's teacher is calling weekly. The reports describe a child who's being tortured, bruises that appear overnight, black eyes, split lips, a child who flinches when adults approach, a child who stopped speaking in class. Every report triggers an investigation. Every investigation ends the same way. Case closed. Here's what Netflix didn't emphasize. Every single time DCFS showed up to interview Gabriel, they did it with his abusers present in the room. Pearl Fernandez and Isauro Aguirre would stand right there, watching, listening, while social workers asked Gabriel if he was being hurt. And every single time, Gabriel would recant. He'd say he was fine. He'd say the bruises were from playing. He'd say he fell, because his torturers were watching. This is standard DCFS protocol in 2013. Interview the child with the parents present. The logic? It shows respect for the family unit. It demonstrates that DCFS isn't trying to separate families unnecessarily. But when the family is the threat, this protocol becomes a weapon. Gabriel knew what would happen if he told the truth while Pearl and Isauro were in the room. He knew the beating that would come after the social workers left. So he lied. He protected himself the only way he could, by protecting his abusers, and DCFS accepted his lies. 60 times, but one report was different. May 17, 2013, exactly 1 week before Gabriel died, his teacher made one final desperate call. This time, she didn't just report bruises. She reported that Gabriel came to school with a black eye, a busted lip, and bruises covering both arms. She told authorities that Gabriel was being tortured. She used that word, tortured. She demanded they send the sheriff. And that's when the system made its final, fatal mistake. My dear friend, before we jump into Gabriel's story, I need to ask for your help. Please hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Every subscription, every share helps these investigations reach more people who might recognize warning signs in their own communities. If you're able to support this work directly, consider joining as a channel member or leaving a super thanks. Your support allows me to spend weeks researching court documents and sealed records, uncovering truths that need to be told. In the comments, let me know you're watching. Your engagement helps YouTube show these stories to people who need to see them. This channel exists to give voices to children who couldn't speak for themselves. Thank you for being part of that mission. Now, let's talk about what Netflix didn't show you about Gabriel Fernandez. May 17, 2013. Gabriel's teacher calls in her final report. This time, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department responds. Deputies are dispatched to Gabriel's apartment to conduct a welfare check, but they never knock on Gabriel's door, because social worker Stephanie Rodriguez gave them the wrong address. Not the wrong street, not the wrong apartment number, the wrong address entirely, 3 blocks away from where Gabriel actually lived. The deputies knock on the door of a stranger's apartment. No one answers. They leave. 7 days later, Gabriel is dead. During the criminal trial against the 4 DCFS social workers, prosecutors revealed something Netflix mentioned in passing but didn't fully explore. Stephanie Rodriguez had been to Gabriel's apartment multiple times. She knew the address. She'd written it correctly in previous reports. But on May 17, 1 week before Gabriel's death, she wrote down an address 3 blocks away. The prosecution argued this was deliberate sabotage. Rodriguez knew Gabriel was being tortured. She knew the reports were credible, but she was overwhelmed. She had 47 open cases. She didn't want another one, so she gave the sheriff the wrong address, knowing they'd knock on the wrong door, knowing they'd find nothing, knowing the case would close. The defense argued it was a clerical error, a simple mistake made by an overworked social worker managing too many cases. A typo, nothing more. The jury never got to decide, because in January 2020, 7 years after Gabriel's death, the California Court of Appeal dismissed all criminal charges against Stephanie Rodriguez and her 3 supervisors before the case ever went to trial. The court ruled that social workers cannot be held criminally liable for decisions made in the course of their employment, even if those decisions result in a child's death, even if those decisions involve falsifying records, fabricating interviews, or giving law enforcement the wrong address. The legal reasoning? Social workers don't have direct control over abusers. They can't physically stop parents from hurting their children. Therefore, they can't be criminally responsible when children die under their supervision. Netflix showed you the wrong address incident in about 30 seconds. They showed you that deputies went to the wrong location, but they didn't show you the 7-year legal battle that followed. They didn't show you the court ruling that established a precedent protecting social workers from criminal prosecution. They didn't show you that Stephanie Rodriguez walked free, and the wrong address wasn't Rodriguez's only mistake. When investigators reviewed her case files after Gabriel's death, they found a pattern of inconsistencies, dates that didn't match, interviews that never happened, home visits that were documented but never occurred. The wrong address wasn't an isolated error. It was part of a pattern of falsification that spanned Gabriel's entire 16 months in the system. And that pattern extended beyond just one social worker. Gabriel's siblings, Virginia and Ezekiel, testified at the criminal trials of Pearl Fernandez and Isaro Aguirre. Netflix included brief clips of their testimony, 30-second sound bites, emotional moments. But they didn't show you the full horror of what these children described under oath. Content warning. The next 4 minutes contain detailed descriptions of extreme child abuse. If you need to skip ahead, the timestamp is in the description. Virginia testified that Isauro Aguirre would beat Gabriel with a metal baseball bat. Not once, not occasionally, regularly. She described hearing the sound of metal hitting bone from her bedroom. She described Gabriel's screams. She described the silence that followed. Ezekiel testified that Gabriel was forced to eat cat feces from the litter box. When he refused, Pearl would hold his mouth open while Isauro forced it down his throat. This wasn't a one-time punishment. This was regular, routine. Both siblings described what they called the box, a small cabinet in the bedroom where Gabriel was locked for hours, sometimes overnight. The cabinet measured approximately 3 feet tall by 2 feet wide. Gabriel was 8 years old. He couldn't stand. He couldn't stretch out. He could only crouch in the darkness. And while he was in the box, Isauro would pepper spray him. Not a single spray to the face. An entire can, emptied directly into Gabriel's eyes and mouth while he was locked in that tiny space with nowhere to go. No way to escape the burning. No way to breathe. Virginia testified that she could hear Gabriel choking and gasping from inside the box. She could hear him begging for water. She could hear him vomiting. And she couldn't help him. Because she was a child too. Ezekiel described what they called the pink punishment. Gabriel was forced to wear pink clothing to school as humiliation. Isauro called him gay slurs, called him weak, called him disgusting. And when Gabriel came home from school, he'd be beaten for looking gay, for wearing the clothes they forced him to wear. The siblings testified that Gabriel was starved for days at a time, that he'd sneak into the kitchen at night trying to find food, that when he was caught, he'd be beaten and locked back in the box. They testified that Gabriel would beg them for food, that he'd ask them to sneak him crackers or bread, that they'd try and sometimes succeed, but that Pearl and Isauro would search their rooms and find the hidden food. Netflix showed you that Gabriel was abused. They showed you courtroom testimony. They showed you tears and trauma. But they didn't show you the systematic, calculated nature of the torture. This wasn't rage. This wasn't discipline that went too far. This wasn't a parent losing control. This was sadism. This was a deliberate, sustained campaign of torture against an 8-year-old child. This was 2 adults who derived pleasure from inflicting maximum suffering. And through it all, through the bat beatings, the pepper spray, the starvation, the humiliation, the box, Gabriel's siblings watched. They watched because they had no choice. They were children trapped in the same house with the same monsters. And the system that was supposed to protect all of them failed. 60 times. After Gabriel's death, investigators did what they should have done while he was alive. They reviewed every DCFS case file, every report, every documented home visit, every interview. And they found something that Netflix gave about 90 seconds of screen time. Social worker Stephanie Rodriguez had documented 11 visits to Gabriel's home between October 2012 and May 2013. 11 face-to-face interviews with Gabriel. 11 detailed reports describing his condition, his home environment, his interactions with his mother and her boyfriend. But when prosecutors cross-referenced Rodriguez's reports with her phone records, her GPS data, her work calendar, and witness statements, they discovered something shocking. At least 4 of those visits never happened. Rodriguez had fabricated entire interviews. She'd written detailed notes about conversations with Gabriel that never occurred. She'd described home conditions she'd never observed. She'd documented bruises she'd never seen. She'd filed reports about a child she hadn't visited. She'd made it all up. But Rodriguez wasn't working alone, and she wasn't the only one falsifying records. 3 other DCFS workers were implicated in the cover-up: Patricia Clement, Kevin Baum, and Gregory Merritt. Patricia Clement was Rodriguez's direct supervisor. She reviewed and approved every one of Rodriguez's fabricated reports. She signed off on interviews that never happened. She certified home visits that never occurred. Kevin Baum was another social worker assigned to Gabriel's case during the 16-month period. His record showed similar patterns of falsification: documented visits that couldn't be verified, interviews that witnesses said never took place. Gregory Merritt was the supervising social worker overseeing both Clement and Rodriguez. He was the highest-ranking DCFS official directly involved in Gabriel's case, and his signature appeared on every falsified report. Here's what Netflix didn't emphasize: these weren't low-level workers making mistakes. This wasn't incompetence. This was a coordinated effort to close Gabriel's case by fabricating evidence that he was safe. The prosecution argued that all 4 knew Gabriel was being tortured. They knew the reports from teachers and nurses were credible, but they falsified records to close the case because their department was overwhelmed. They had too many cases, too much paperwork, too little time. Gabriel was just a number, and closing his case, even with fabricated evidence, made their numbers look better. In 2016, all 4 were criminally charged with child abuse and falsifying public records. The prosecution sought prison time. The case went to trial. But in January 2020, 7 years after Gabriel's death, the California Court of Appeal dismissed all charges before the jury could reach a verdict. The court ruled that social workers cannot be held criminally liable for decisions made in the course of their employment, even if those decisions involve falsifying government records, even if those decisions directly contribute to a child's death. The legal precedent is now clear. Social workers in California have immunity. Netflix mentioned the charges were dismissed. They showed you a 30-second news clip, but they didn't show you the public outrage. They didn't show you the advocacy groups calling it a betrayal. They didn't show you that this ruling means no DCFS worker will ever face criminal consequences for a child's death, no matter how egregious their negligence, no matter how blatant their falsification of records. Stephanie Rodriguez is free. Patricia Clement is free. Kevin Baum is free. Gregory Merritt is free. Gabriel's case files remain sealed. The falsified records? Still in the system. The pattern of fabrication? Still unpunished. And the system that killed Gabriel? Still operating exactly the same way. Here's the context Netflix provided but didn't fully explore. Los Angeles County DCFS is the largest child welfare agency in the United States. In 2013, when Gabriel was being tortured, they were handling over 120,000 cases, with just 1,200 social workers. That's 100 cases per worker. The recommended maximum by child welfare experts, 15. When Gabriel's case was active, Stephanie Rodriguez was managing 47 open investigations simultaneously. Patricia Clement was supervising 23 social workers. Gregory Merritt was overseeing an entire district. The system wasn't just broken, it was designed to fail. But here's what makes Gabriel's case different from the thousands of other children in the system. Gabriel wasn't invisible. 60 reports, multiple agencies, teachers, nurses, security guards, family members, neighbors. Everyone saw what was happening. This wasn't a child who fell through the cracks. This was a child the system actively chose to ignore. After Gabriel's death, California passed sweeping reforms. Assembly Bill 1299 required social workers to interview children outside the presence of parents or guardians. No more interviews with abusers in the room. Senate Bill 1322 mandated better coordination between DCFS and law enforcement. When teachers report abuse, both agencies must respond together. The Gabriel Fernandez Act created stricter oversight of social workers and harsher penalties for falsifying records. On paper, these reforms should prevent another Gabriel Fernandez case. But here's what Netflix didn't show you. Those reforms are underfunded and understaffed. As of 2024, 11 years after Gabriel's death, DCFS caseloads in Los Angeles County remain at 80+ cases per worker, still 5 times higher than the recommended maximum. The reforms mandated more oversight, but they didn't provide funding for more social workers. They didn't reduce caseloads. They didn't fix the fundamental problem. Too many cases, too few workers, too little time, and children are still dying. Between 2013 and 2016, while Gabriel's case was making headlines, while reforms were being passed, while California promised to do better, 23 children died under DCFS supervision in Los Angeles County alone. 23 children who had open cases, who had social workers assigned to them, who had reports filed on their behalf. 23 children the system failed to save. Netflix showed you a broken system. They showed you that Gabriel's death led to reforms. They showed you politicians promising change. But they didn't show you that the system is still broken, that the reforms didn't work, that children are still dying while social workers carry impossible caseloads and face zero criminal liability when those children die. Gabriel's death changed laws. It didn't change the system. Gabriel Fernandez died on May 24, 2013. He was 8 years old. His mother, Pearl Fernandez, is serving life in prison without the possibility of parole. Her boyfriend, Isaro Aguirre, is on death row at San Quentin State Prison. The 4 social workers who falsified his records, they're free. No criminal charges, no civil liability. No consequences. Netflix told Gabriel's story to 26 million viewers worldwide, but they didn't tell you about the 60 reports that were ignored, the wrong address that could have saved his life, the siblings' testimony that revealed systematic torture, the falsified records that let social workers walk free, the court ruling that established immunity for social worker negligence. This is what Netflix didn't show. This is Gabriel's complete story. If you want to see more cases where the system failed, cases the mainstream media won't fully investigate, subscribe to this channel. Next week, I'm covering the Turpin children, the 13 siblings who were rescued from a house of horrors, only to be failed by the very system that saved them. Gabriel's siblings, Virginia and Ezekiel, are now adults. They've spoken publicly about their trauma and their survival. If you want to support organizations fighting child abuse, I've linked to the National Child Abuse Hotline and Children's Advocacy Centers in the description below. Gabriel deserved better. Every child deserves better. If this video opened your eyes to what Netflix didn't show, hit that subscribe button right now. I investigate the cases mainstream media won't fully cover. The systemic failures, the covered-up evidence, the victims the system forgot. Next video drops soon. The Turpin case. 13 children rescued from torture, then failed by the system that saved them. Subscribe so you don't miss it. I'll see you in the next one.